accused killer of 4 Idaho students have been called to testify before a Pennsylvania grand jury. Their son, BRYAN Kohberger, is charged in the gruesome stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students last November. He was arrested at his parents' Pennsylvania home nearly 2 months later. Kohberger's parents are reportedly being questioned about another case of a missing woman in Pennsylvania. Joining us with more now on the legal issues at stake is News Nation's senior national correspondent Brian Enton and News Nation legal contributor Jesse Weber. Brian, why are the police looking to talk to the parents about a case in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, this is an interesting development. We have confirmed that BRYAN Kohberger's parents were called to testify in front of this investigative grand jury that has to do with this missing persons case. 45-year-old Dana Smithers, she went missing in June of 2022. Her body was just discovered about a month ago. We're told this is just an investigative grand jury, so it's not like they're trying to indict one specific person, but still, it's very, very interesting that they would subpoena and call in BRYAN Kohberger's parents to come in and testify.
Jesse, what do you make of this?
So they're trying to determine if a crime was committed. I think that it should be important to note that Ms. Smithers disappeared in the same county where the parents lived. So one possibility could be, is it about BRYAN Kohberger committing a crime only a few months before he's accused of committing quadruple homicide? Or could it be that these are just residents of that community and they have just some ancillary information regarding the disappearance of Ms. Smithers? That could very well be a possibility. And the Kohberger front, I do think it's interesting considering one of the big factors we've always wondered is if BRYAN Kohberger really did this to those 4 college students in Idaho, was this his first time?
Right.
It's such a brutal crime, and sometimes these killers actually do something before and it's found out later.
Well, it's not just such a brutal crime. It was incredibly bold. I mean, there were 4 victims. There's not just one victim. He allegedly murdered them in a way that was very up close and personal and very risky. There were witnesses in the house at the time, right, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. And important for me to point out, too, we also have a source close to the case in Pennsylvania who tells us that BRYAN Kohberger has a very solid alibi in that case. What the alibi is, we don't know. Is it possible that somehow his parents are part of that alibi, and that's why they wanted to call them in to get them on the record? Remember, I mean, you know, they don't have to talk to the police, but one way that they can require them to come in and talk is with a grand jury subpoena. But I found it very interesting that we were able to confirm that there is an alibi here, apparently, with BRYAN Kohberger.
And very quickly, do we know if the parents, Kohberger's parents, have been cooperative with in law enforcement, you know, both in Idaho and in Pennsylvania up to now?
It appears they've been cooperative. I mean, we know that they are testifying. I mean, they're not, you know, fighting the subpoena from what we've been told. So they will go and testify to the grand jury. I mean, I'm not sure that they wanted to do that or that they would have just voluntarily done it with like a police detective, but they are going to cooperate with these grand jury subpoenas.
How unusual is this, Jesse?
Well, the idea that you have a suspect who's being implicated in another crime, we've seen that happen before. Again, we just don't know his connection to this case.
Right.
But the parents, in a case in a day where the parents of accused killers have really taken center stage, they're sometimes the people that have the most information. These killers sometimes, or these suspects, have relayed information to their parents, and they are the ones that you need to speak to.
All right, Jesse Weber, Brian Enton, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this case in the days ahead.
Our breaking news in the Idaho investigation involving BRYAN Kohberger, the suspect in the murders of 4 Idaho college students. The question is there more? We talked about that possibility, authorities investigating his role in other murders and maybe in other states. Today, we put some meat on the bones of that. There's a grand jury impaneled in Pennsylvania, not Idaho, okay? And his parents have been subpoenaed to testify. Former FBI agent and News Nation Law and Order contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer and News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton join. Brian, let me start with you. What do we know?
Well, we're building off of your exclusive reporting, Chris. You reported that that Kohberger was being looked into in other murders and other cases. We now have confirmation that Bryan Kohberger's parents are testifying in front of a grand jury in Pennsylvania, and that it has something to do with a case there involving a missing woman that went missing last year. And it is an investigative grand jury, which I heard you emphasize, which is important. Because it's not a grand jury where they're looking to indict one specific person, but they are looking into the situation as a whole. We have also learned through a source close to the case, Chris, that there is a strong alibi, reportedly, that Bryan Kohberger has in this situation.
Okay, appreciate you, brother. Chime in if you want to. Coffin-Daffer, help me. I'm confused by this situation, and I'll tell you quickly why, and you can correct anything that I have wrong or explain the confusion. One, if he's got an alibi, I don't understand why you're putting the parents in front of the grand jury. If you're the parents, supposedly they were making legal moves to quash the subpoena. They didn't want to do this. If you have information about an alibi about your kid and a connection to a bad act, let alone a felony that could be a murder, why wouldn't you want to go in? I don't understand this. I also don't understand the use of an investigative grand jury, because usually they're looking at a panoply of potential different investigations, not just one. What's your take on this?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, exactly, nail on the head for both of the first two. It doesn't make any sense if they have a nailed down alibi. Again, that's source information, but if it's nailed down, why are you calling on the parents? Why do you need them to say, yeah, we waved goodbye and gave him a hug and he got in a car and left? That should be proved through digital information that would be retrieved from his cell phone. And there should also be where he was staying there that was separated from where this not missing person, but actually murder took place. Remember, the body was just recently recovered, and that's why there would be an investigative grand jury convened right now to look at all the facts surrounding that.
Now, and also, why would you split them up if that's true, that the parents aren't testifying together? Now, depending on the state, you can have different rules. You guys know this, but for you at home. But in general, witnesses in a grand jury are not held to secrecy. So if you split them up like that, that means they can talk to other people about their testimony. They could coordinate testimony. It's just odd. Now, Jennifer, you reminded us of something that has become much more instructive now than when we were originally playing with it back in January. Tell the audience what you fleshed out in terms of searches that you found online and why, now that we know they're looking at him for other things, become especially relevant.
Right. If you look on Google, there's particular searches that you can do to see what queries are made. So if you go into Bryan Kohberger suspect or Bryan Kohberger wanted for a period of years going even beyond 2018, before 2018, and well before these murders, well before he was arrested, it's amazing. You see all these queries for those. Well, who would conduct those queries? But I would contend that person querying themselves, wanting to know if they're wanted, wanting to know if they are a suspect.
Like, subscribe, and comment below. See you next time.